Hey guys, what's going on? This is Ed from VinylAlbumCovers.com, and welcome back to Going Off, because I'm about to. We've never, up until this point, I mean, there have only been a few episodes of this, but the one thing we haven't mentioned is forgive me, that's the steering wheel. Sorry. I'm still here though, for real. But the one thing we haven't really talked too much about is the sonic quality of the stuff that we're hearing. Of course, we have like a series that's only got one episode so far. There will be more that talks about really great sounding albums. We've got one up so far. Like I said, Don't Be Cruel by Bobby Brown is amazing, and I have plenty of ideas for others. But we need to talk about what happened. You know, what it was that went so completely wrong with sound quality, because everything just sounds so terrible now. Well, not everything, but a lot of things just don't sound good anymore. And there's reasons for that. My generation, specifically, grew up hearing the hits on the radio. I am kind of, if I'm not the last generation of like purely hardcore radio listeners, then I'm second to last. But one thing's for sure, I'm near the end of the line when it comes to the radio, because at this point radio's dead. Nobody cares about radio. Radio is something that you encounter in a doctor's office or something like that. Nobody listens to the radio to catch the latest hit. Like we're well past that, and we should be. Radio got completely full of itself and did its job so incredibly wrong for such an incredibly long period of time that it got arrogant, and now it's dead, and I couldn't be happier, honestly. But we grew up listening to radio. Now, radio uses compression, something called bus compression, which means they want the quiet parts loud and the loud parts louder. They're trying to be as in your face as possible to get your attention as you're flipping through the dial, which is a good idea, actually. That makes a lot of sense to do that. I totally get it. In fact, I applaud it. I mean, it's just the radio, so who cares, But the problem is, my generation grew up to become adults who grew up to choose audio engineering as an avocation, and a way to make a living. And we all decided, and I'm not exactly sure where it started, but somewhere along the line we decided it's probably the fault of my generation, and not even really just the audio engineers, and mostly not the audio engineers, to be fair. But I'll get into that in just a minute, because I know I'm crossing lines here a bit, so bear with me while I kind of work through this. I don't have a script or anything. I'm clearly in my car. I'm just kind of freewheeling. But somewhere along the line, someone decided, wouldn't it be cool if that record sounded like the radio? The answer, of course, is no. It would not be cool if something sounded like the radio. It's not supposed to. The radio is flawed, and that's okay, because it's the radio. If you really like something, you can go to the store and buy it and hear it in great quality. It's actually kind of a cool idea, because it makes the buyer not be satisfied with home taping, which they swore was going to kill music in the 80s, and it didn't. Something else killed music, but it wasn't that. But yeah, so that wasn't really the problem. I'm getting crossed here. I'm also watching traffic. It's not great out here right now, by the way, if you're curious. I'm in DC. But yeah, so people decided that music should just be loud, just for the sake of being loud. There doesn't need to be dynamics or anything like that. And so they slowly started going away. And everything came out mastered loud, or made really loud. And that's kind of where we are now. we're in this space where everything is just so stupidly loud. And it absolutely doesn't have to be. It's so unnecessary. But that's where we are now, and people have become accustomed to loud. And it's, to be frank, I mean, it's completely killed music. Just completely killed it. The sonic properties of it. And that's where we are now. And it's really, really terrible. It's really, really sad that we're at that place now where everything is so stupidly loud. Now, who's at fault for that? Well, initially I started to confuse you, and I didn't mean to. So bear with me. Now I can actually stop driving, and I can look at you. Hey, hi. Whose fault is it? Well, people are so quick to blame the audio engineers for this. They're very quick to blame or they'll blame the mastering engineers. Mastering is like the final step of a recording process. It's when it's the final stage where the album is looked at as a whole album and not as individual tracks. And it's that person that is looked at as the enemy when it comes to bad sounding albums or loud albums. And let me be very, very clear. It is not his or her fault. That person is not to blame. You've got the wrong person. They're so quick to blame, what's his name? John Astley or Dave Donnelly or guys like that, like mastering engineers. It's not their fault. Y'all are wrong for doing it. They are not to blame. They're just doing what they're told. Mastering engineers do what they're told. There are very few, like Bernie Grundman, for instance, or Bob Ludwig, guys like that who've been doing it for so many decades that they can kind of impose their will a bit and decide that they're not going to do it, or at least decide that they're not going to go as far as they're being asked to go, and they can kind of split the difference, which is kind of cool. But that's because they have the cachet to do it. They've got the stroke to do it. Most mastering engineers don't have that, and so they're just kind of stuck with whatever, with whatever decision is made on the back end. And those decisions come from producers or supervising producers for projects and so on and so forth. Those are the people that you should blame. Those are the ones that are making decisions about whether something should be loud or if it should have dynamics. Those are the ones you should be mad at, not the mastering engineers. Just putting that out there. Maybe that's the whole point of why I'm doing this. I don't know. This is just very free form. But so now we're kind of at this place now, and this has been going on a long time. I mean, we're 10 years in now, if not longer. We are longer, actually. That's not true. It's been going on longer than that, where stuff is just loud. And it's just, and then of course on top of that, then we have things like Beat Detective and Auto-Tune, Melodyne, where everything just sounds like it was just done by robots, where drums don't sound like drums, they sound like drum machines because they're on the grid. Like they march in perfect inhuman time. Human beings fluctuate. It's what we do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being just, slightly off here and there. As long as your pocket is good, who cares? But with Beat Detective, you can just snap everything to a grid and not worry about it. So everything marches in perfect time. And you sacrifice feel and groove for that. All the stuff that makes you want to listen to music in the first place goes away. And it also means that you can have musicians that don't really know what they're doing, drummers that aren't really all that good with time, and you can fix them. It is my firm belief that if you are a drummer and you don't have good time, you're not a drummer. and you need to leave the studio and let the pros handle it. That used to happen all the time back in the 70s and 80s. Specifically, it's studio drummers that would come in, like Steve Gadd and Rick Marotta, and later on like Josh Freese. You know, they would come in and they would ghost play on the albums that they were working on. You know, they wouldn't get credit for doing it. Oftentimes you'd find if you look at the albums that they've played on, if you look in special thanks, their names will be mentioned. And if you see those names in there, chances are pretty good that the drummer in whatever band it was couldn't cut it, and they were replaced by whoever was in the special thanks. And that goes for a lot of musicians, you know, at that point, and certainly even now. But it's just like, if you can't do it, don't go into the studio. But that's kind of how we end up with this terrible robotic sounding music. And not everything is this way, but a lot of things are. I mean, even if you look at, like, this will get me in trouble, but even if you look at Jacob Collier, for instance, as amazing as he is, I mean, Jacob Collier is a genius. Everybody has been waiting for, like, what the next thing is, and that's exactly what Jacob is. Jacob is next. In fact, he's happening right now. He's creating Jacob Collier music. It is without genre. He's incredible. But he is also guilty of snapping notes in time. He doesn't use Melodyne or Auto-Tune. And frankly, for the record, I don't think those things are completely evil. But he will correct individual notes to make them perfect. I don't know that you need to do that. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. As long as it feels good, I don't necessarily really care all that much if it's perfect. But darn it, he does. And he has perfect pitch, and I get it. But if something's a few cents off, just leave it alone. Like, that's what makes us human. So I kind of disagree on a philosophical level with messing with things like that. Anyway, kind of what my original point is because people are doing so much, engineers and producers and musicians are doing so much manipulation because of the cheapness of the inexpensiveness of audio recording these days. They're ending up with just a very robotic sounding kind of thing. And a lot of the engineers don't really know how to engineer very well. Like, the theory is not really behind them, and so they're just kind of doing what they think to be correct, and they're piling plugins on things rather than, some things can be left dry. Heaven forbid. But it's like the engineers today, the younger engineers, don't know anything about what a dry signal is, and they don't understand the beauty of a dry signal. There can be beauty in dry signals, but people don't know that. And so basically my whole point here is that we've ended up with just not very good sounding music anymore. Stuff that doesn't groove and it doesn't feel, it all feels very robotic and processed, and it's absolutely unnecessary. And I'm not going to be the old man on the hill and go, in my day, like, I'm not doing that, because there is good sounding stuff out there. I mentioned Jacob Collier, and I meant to. Like, his stuff sounds good, and it does feel good. He does understand feel, and in spite of the fact that, he pitch corrects individual notes, he doesn't play to the grid, when it comes to drums. He's just playing, and he just naturally has a really good sense of time, great sense of time. There are amazing drummers out there now, Dennis Chambers being chiefly among them, and Steve Gadd is still playing, and Vinny Colaiuta, and, amazing players, that are perfectly capable of generating groove. And we do get it. You just have to look for it. But on the whole, I mean, the stuff that's out there that's really, really popular is either just drum machine to death or just played perfectly and then just played imperfectly and then snapped to a grid. It just doesn't feel particularly real. And to be clear, like, I don't hate drum machines either. It's not that. As long as drum machines sound like drum machines and they're not programmed to sound like the real thing, then I have a problem with it. But drum machines can sound perfectly fine. It's just, I think what we need to get back to having engineers that really understand the art of engineering, because Logic Pro and Pro Tools have become so inexpensive, and because people can, make pretty good sounding stuff at home on their computers through DAW, they're not really learning how to be engineers. They're not really getting the theory behind them. There's a whole bunch of theory that goes with being an audio engineer. I mean, I know what that theory is. I went to school for it. And you should. Like, engineering is not something you should be picking up from YouTube videos. But I get the sense that a lot of them are, and they're just doing the easy thing. They're just automatically adding auto-tune after someone sings, and they're just automatically using Beat Detective when someone plays the drums, and so on and so forth, and just using piles and piles of plugins when they probably don't even really need to do that. And I think that's what's contributing to the bad sound. And then too, the record executives get a hold of what they've done, and they're like, no, make it louder. And then they do it. Then whoever the mastering engineer is, and sometimes the mastering engineer is the recording engineer, and that should never be the case. The mastering engineer should always be someone else. But sometimes it's not. And when it's not, you can literally just hit a couple of buttons and make something loud and crush the waveform into just nothing when you have this just solid wall of sound. I remember there was a track by Bobby Valentino, he was Bobby V at the time, because he couldn't be Bobby Valentino, somebody else had the name. But anyway, it was a song called Anonymous. He did it with Timbaland in the clutch. It's a great song. But it's compressed to death. It's almost unlistenable. And it's a shame too, because it's such a great song, and it's really, really cool, but it's lost under bus compression. Everything was just completely crushed. When the bass hits, you can literally hear the waveforms just being crushed. You can hear distortion. It's such a shame. It really is. For such a great song to be crushed by that. And there are many, many others. I mean, we'd be here for a while. But this is all just due to, that's all just due to, number one, producers deciding that something should be loud. And then, recording engineers that don't really know what they're doing. Jimmy Douglas is not among those people. I mean, Jimmy Douglas knows what he's doing, so he was probably told to make it loud. And so he did. He did what he was told. But we really need to get back to the place where people appreciate the art of engineering, and they don't need to make things loud, because loudness is annoying. If you want it louder, turn it up. It's not that difficult. Reach over, get on your phone, because we're all listening on our phones anymore. There are few of us have stereos. It's a niche thing now. But if you're in your car, turn up the volume. If you're on your phone, turn up the volume. You can make it loud yourself. I really wish mastering engineers wouldn't make that choice for me, because they're blowing it. So I just had to get that out of the way. I needed to go off. Okay, sorry. I know it was a little scattered too, but hopefully you got something out of it. I would love to have a dialogue. I always want to have dialogue. I want to talk, darn it. So if you have anything to say about who you think is to blame for the way things sound, leave it in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. I think it would be fun. But anyway, thank you very much for watching my rant. Thank you for watching me go off. I've got more stuff coming for sure. I know this was kind of late too, but I've just been so stupidly busy. I'm in my car right now, for crying out loud. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching. And until we see each other next time, until you see me next time, keep listening to great music.